Voicemail from my neighbor. Ruth, a man just tried your garage keypad. It flashed red. Are you changing the code? I saved the message and sat still long enough to hear my own breath. When a door forgets you, it makes a small sound, the kind a stranger wouldn't notice. I noticed. If your child changed your code without telling you, would you plead, fight, or write? I didn't raise my voice. I raised the stakes for silence. In the next minute, I'll give you 3 small things that turn noise into order, the sentence that kept my front door mine, the little green card the post office made them sign, and one promise I made to myself so I wouldn't become a task on someone else's phone. Then we'll rewind 48 hours to the first red blink on the opener. 48 hours. My name was missing from a family calendar invite. The squares marched through December, labeled with dinners and drop-offs and ugly sweater, but where I usually wrote Ruth Pies, there was an empty box the color of a held breath. It is strange how an empty square can be louder than a slammed door. I tapped the voicemail again. The red blink, the neighbor's voice, the way my hands went cold at the wrists, these were not proof yet. They were the first thread. I pulled. I started a ledger in a thin notebook that still smelled like paper, not like a cloud. Time, date, what happened, who said it, how I knew. Without a ledger, you are offended. With a ledger, you are specific. I did not want to be a fire. I wanted to be a map. At 7:10 p.m., I texted my son, "Did you change the garage code? Is there a reason?" He wrote back, "We're coordinating some things. Friday works to talk." Coordinating is a soft word that can lift heavy boxes without asking what's inside. I poured tea and watched the streetlights arrive one by one. My kitchen window reflected a woman who looked like me and wasn't sure she was invited to her own evening. I am 74. The older you are, the more the world asks you to trust systems you didn't build. I can do that if I get to read the instructions. The next morning, I called the courthouse, not a judge, just the public line. Hypothetical question, I said, as if it were a hat I could take off later. If a family wants temporary control over someone's decisions, what does a careful court look for? The clerk didn't give advice. She gave language that fit like handrails, strong proof, and the softest solution that still protects. I wrote those phrases twice. I do not collect big words. I collect grips. At 10:05, I walked to my credit union. The manager knows me by the way I hold receipts, between second and third finger, so my thumb stays clean. "I'd like a note on my account," I said, in my own words. He listened. "No new joint accounts or beneficiary changes unless I bring an independent person with me, and we all sign a short note about why." He typed, read it back, and printed a copy. Paper does not love you, but it stays. 2 doors down, the pharmacist printed my counseling notes, dates, small checkmarks next to conversations about side effects and timing. She added one line without my asking, "Patient engages, understands, and manages safely." I slid the papers behind the credit union copy and felt my shoulders lower by half an inch. When people say you're not the same, I want to say correct. Now I'm patient and precise. At home, I typed house rules for all of us in big letters and kept it to 1 page. No surprises. Repairs by text with written confirmation from me. 2 keys remain with me. Written list for anything removed, even if it's just sorting. I taped the page inside the coat closet at eye level. A rule is not a wall. It's a place to put your hand when the stairs turn. I mailed 2 envelopes by certified mail, one to my son, one to my daughter-in-law. The postal worker slid a pair of green return cards across the counter and said, "Initial here and here." It felt like lighting a porch light you might not come home to, just in case someone needed to see the steps. After lunch, a city worker took photos of my front rail. "A complaint," he said, polite in the way people are when they are about to translate your life into a form. He left a notice with the word compliance and a date for follow-up. I wrote his name in the ledger and made a copy of the notice. I have learned that when people disagree with your existence, they outsource the conversation to notice paper. That evening, Mrs. Winfield, my neighbor, called. "I heard a truck idle in front of your driveway last night," she said. Not unusual this time of year, but it idled the way a question idles. She's a retired nurse. Everything she says sounds like careful stitches. Would you be willing to write what you remember? I asked. Only dates and details. She chuckled. Dates are the only kind thing to write when families are tired. I slept little. Worry chops the night into pieces you can't stack. Before dawn, I wrote down a promise. I will not try to win with volume. I will try to win with clarity. By mid-morning, I called for a porch inspection. The man on the phone scheduled a visit. I texted Mr. Alvarez, the neighbor with a tape measure that has seen more wood than I have seen birthdays. Come check the rail with me? I asked. He came at 2 o'clock, measured the height, pressed the brackets with the heel of his hand, and said, "Not pretty, not dangerous." He took photos at angles I wouldn't have thought to take. His hands smelled like pencil shavings and rain. He printed the photos on his old inkjet and dated them in tidy numbers. I put them after the notice. Files are just memories with page numbers. At noon on Thursday, I took a bus downtown to speak with a lawyer in a low-rise building where the carpet remembered footsteps. He asked to see my ledger. He read quietly, the way a person reads a recipe that might feed more mouths than planned. We can tune your trust so your home remains yours while you're living, he said, and we can add a simple rule for everyone. Kindness counts. No one gets rewarded for pushing. He did not say fiduciary or incentive clause. He said simple rule. I liked that. We scheduled a notary for next week. He would draft the lines in plain English, not the kind that rattles when you shake it. On Friday at 11 o'clock, 2 women from an agency came for a home visit. I had invited them myself. I opened cabinets, showed pill organizers with check marks, pointed to the slip of paper where I track blood pressure next to the weather. We walked through the hallway slowly, not because I needed to, but because I wanted them to notice I could choose pace. No immediate concerns, one said, and the other wrote it down. People think the opposite of worry is peace. Often the opposite of worry is paperwork that tells the truth. At 1:16, the doorbell rang and gravity answered with me. My son stood with papers. My daughter-in-law sat in the car, engine running like a sentence that doesn't want to be interrupted. He looked at me like you look at a math problem you used to know how to do. It's not a big deal, he said, which is what people say when it is big for you and small for them. He handed me a packet with words that made my kitchen colder, a request for the court to step into my life, fast. I'm willing to accept help, I said, but not a net I didn't not. I showed him the one-page house rules in the closet. He read it and frowned the way a person frowns at a seatbelt. We need the keys, he said. Plural, like a small shove. You need to sign for the letter at the post office, I said, and gave him the slip. It contains my schedule, my neighbors, and a proposal to bring in a calm, neutral person to coordinate when we can't. A stranger deciding our family, my daughter-in-law called from the car window. A helper keeping us from turning each other into errands, I answered. When they left, the house grew taller by an inch. I wrote the time and the weather, 62 and bright. I made a copy of the packet and slid it behind the home visit notes and the porch photos. My ledger was becoming a binder. A binder is not a weapon. It is a way to ask a room full of strangers to see the way you actually live. The weekend arranged itself into small mercies. The credit union manager called to confirm he had attached my note to the account. The pharmacist texted, "I'll vouch for the counseling notes if someone asks. Keep the printouts." Mrs. Winfield knocked with a casserole I didn't deserve and a story about her first week as a nurse when she stopped a surgeon from closing a chart too soon. "We don't get paid to be sure," she said. "We get paid to be careful." On Sunday afternoon, I sat at the dining table and practiced sentences the way a choir practices a hymn. I can cook, bathe, decide, and ask for help. I am willing to accept the gentlest help that still protects me. I am not willing to be moved like a box. I did not practice being brave. I practiced being whole in my own voice. Monday morning, the porch inspector came. He tapped the rail, looked at the screws, measured twice, as if measuring was a kind of blessing, and said, "Not an emergency. Cosmetic. Fix the bracket, sand and paint later." He told me he would send an email. Emails are modern stamps. They put an official hand on a quiet truth. I printed the message before it could think better of itself. A church friend called to ask if I would be at the pantry check-in Tuesday. I almost said yes by reflex. Then I looked at the calendar, at the empty square with my name missing, and said, "Next week." She paused and asked, "Everything okay?" I said, "I'm protecting a boundary without breaking a bridge." She laughed softly. "That's a sermon title." "It's a grocery list," I said. Tuesday at noon, I returned to the lawyer's office and signed a draft that said, in words I could imagine telling a tired clerk, "My home remains my home while I am alive and in charge of my mind. If people who say they love me try to push or scare me, they don't get prizes for it." We set a date for the notary, and he gave me a copy with the ink still a little shiny. I carried it like a recipe card someone's grandmother had written in steady loops. That evening, the mail brought the 2 green cards back. My certified letters had been signed. I put them in the binder under the house rules. It was a little thing, the way the paper admitted contact had happened. People forget how good it feels to be reachable. By now the week felt like a hallway with lights that came on as you walked, not before. I laid out clothes for Thursday, a plain skirt and shoes that wouldn't become part of the story. I tucked a folded church program into the binder to mark the page where I wanted the final words to live: request denied, home stays, help welcomed if gentle, agency may close the file, property matters to be handled without panic. Not a victory song. A shopping list that says enough. Evening brought a text that read, "We'll swing by Tuesday to start sorting the garage." There are sentences that dress like help and behave like a hand at your elbow. I sent back one line from the house rules: no unannounced entries, access scheduled by text with my written yes. No reply. Silence is also a choice. It just refuses to pick up a pen. Before dawn on Thursday, I poured coffee into a thermos and slipped 2 paper cups into my bag. I wasn't being sentimental. I was making room for an outcome where my son met me like a person instead of a problem. If he came without frost in his mouth, we would drink together on a bench. If not, the second cup would sit beside me like proof I still remembered how to offer. Downtown, the courthouse air tasted like old rugs and pencils. I sat and balanced the binder on my knees. A woman across the hall adjusted a scarf around her mother's throat. A man rehearsed a sentence under his breath, the way people do when they hope it will sound like truth if they water it enough. We were all carrying our versions of ordinary. My son arrived with a careful face. He sat at the far end of the bench and did not see the extra cup. "Mom," he said, and stopped. "I know," I said, and didn't. We waited together in the silence that lawyers learn to charge by the hour. When they called my name, I stood. My back did not try to turn me into a question mark. I held the binder, but I did not hold it like a shield. Shields block. I needed this to show. If your child ever says, "A judge will decide if you stay," you do not have to wrestle your child. You have to bring a story that can stand upright when the room tilts. Mine had dates, copies, neighbors, a house that did not lie about itself, and a 1-page rule written in letters big enough to see from the doorway. It had a promise, a private one, that I would not confuse love with surrender or help with taking over. At the threshold, I felt the old tug to apologize for the space I take. I did not. I walked in and let the room see a woman who keeps receipts not because she is suspicious, but because she is visible. I thought of the voicemail that began this week, a neighbor describing a red blink, a question waiting for answer. I had brought one. The judge's chair was a simple thing, unadorned, the color of dry bark. He looked at me and then at the papers, and then at my son, and then back at me. "Good morning," he said, and it was nothing burst, nothing broke, everything could still be decided by the gentlest rule that protects. There is a way the world leans toward tidy endings. This isn't that. This is the long work of staying a person inside a family that has learned to speak like a calendar and a clipboard. It is the work of keeping love from becoming logistics. It is the work of telling the truth softly enough that it can be heard, and clearly enough that it can't be ignored. I set the binder down where it could be read and not worshipped. I kept my hand open by my side, the same hand that had written dates, lifted envelopes, tapped digits into a phone, and opened the closet to a page that made us all responsible for being decent. If the week had taught me anything, it was this: when you are older, gentleness is not weakness, it is a complicated skill. The clerk asked if I was ready. I said yes in a voice that sounded like someone I would trust. And then the story widened. "Ms. Pritchard, in 2 minutes, tell me what you want me to understand." I heard the judge the way you hear your name on a platform, clearer than the announcements. I stood so my voice wouldn't fold. I cook, bathe, take my meds, keep appointments, and ask for help when I need it. 2 proofs. The city said my porch isn't an emergency. The pharmacy says I manage safely. 1 promise. I accept gentle help that protects me. I don't accept being moved like a box. He watched my face, not the papers. Thank you. Evan shifted in his chair. We're not trying to take over, he said, words carried like eggs in a thin bag. The house, there are safety issues. Mom forgets. I misplace reading glasses, I said. I don't misplace myself. Marcy's back was straight enough to hold tension. We've been asking to help. Strangers take photos through windows now. We even saw a listing. That listing wasn't mine, I said. If strangers hover, you call the police, not a moving truck. The judge raised a hand. Let's keep this spare. Mr. Pritchard, what do you want me to do today, in plain language? Evan looked at the paperwork as if it were a map written by weather. Temporary authority, he started, then softened it. Temporary help. I prefer help that doesn't turn a person into a form, the judge said. Do you have recent, specific facts that show she cannot manage, not fears, facts? Garage code, Marcy said. Security. Changed without telling me, I said. The judge nodded. Ms. Pritchard, you brought documents? I carried my binder like a loaf of bread, made to be shared. On top was a single page, house rules for all of us. No unannounced entries. Repairs by text with my written yes. 2 keys remain with me. Written list for any item removed. He read it aloud softly, then slid it back. Plain English helps me listen. He reviewed the porch email, not an immediate hazard. He read the pharmacist's note, engages, understands, manages safely. He held the 2 green postal cards like seashells that remembered other hands. He turned to Evan. Would you agree to no code changes without your mother's written yes and to scheduled access by text? We can build that into a plan. Evan's mouth opened, then closed. Marcy's jaw signed a quick no before words arrived. Emergencies don't wait for signatures, she said. True, the judge said. So are boundary violations dressed as efficiency. He tapped the house rules once, not a gavel, a reminder. A thought, a neutral helper to coordinate repairs and calls so MS. Pritchard isn't alone and you aren't improvising. Would you all consider that? I proposed it in my letter, I said. Calm, not kin. Evan stared at the tabletop. We don't need a stranger, he murmured, which sounded like hope giving up a chair. Recess, the judge said. Find the hallway version of mercy. If you can agree on something gentler than what I can impose, do it. Outside, the bench remembered my spare paper cup. I set it down again as if hospitality might survive bureaucracy. Evan sat far away. Marcy stood like a decision still loading. We're doing this because we love you, she said, and I believed her even as the word tried to boss me. We can't live in constant crisis. Neither can I said. That's why I write things down. I hate that page in the closet, she said. I know, I said. It makes you look at me instead of the plan in your head. Evan wiped his palms on his jeans, the same gesture he used before spelling tests. What would a neutral person actually do? Schedule repairs by text with both of you copied, I said. Review invoices so no one argues about money. Keep codes in a sealed envelope I control, with rules for emergency use. 1 short check-in call weekly. 15 minutes. No speeches. Marcy exhaled. And if you start missing meds? The pharmacist documents our talks, I said. If I miss, we adjust together. If I get foggy, I'll say yes to more help. If I clear, we scale back. No prizes for scaring me. Could the helper talk like a person, not an app? Evan asked. I like people, I said. Apps don't eat casseroles. He almost smiled. The clerk opened the door. Path forward. There is, I said. If they meet me halfway. Back inside, the judge read our faces. Report. We agreed to a neutral helper, I said. Repairs by text with my written yes. No code changes without a written yes. 2 keys with me. Written list for any item removed. Weekly 15-minute check-ins. Emergency envelope with rules. Marcy added, if she starts mixing up meds, we scale help up. With my say, I said. The judge hummed approval. Name someone. Harbor Family Services, I said. Miss Cole. Calm voice. I passed the card I kept next to the spare cup. Objection, he asked Evan. He shook his head. Marcy's face combined surrender and relief. Good, the judge said. I'll set a 60-day review. Meanwhile, no unilateral code changes, no listing, no showings, no entering without scheduled access, no removing items without a written list initialed by Ms. Pritchard. Harbor to begin within 10 days. Weekly call. Speak to each other as if you intend to know each other after the season. Outside, I poured coffee into both cups. Evan accepted his like it might explode. Marcy didn't. I wasn't grading. I'm sorry, he said, for the way this looks. It looks like trying, I said. Messy trying is still trying. We walked into a day that hadn't noticed us. Birds argued over crumbs of weather. Cars hummed like people thinking about groceries. The calendar, leaving your name off, Evan said. Thoughtless. Not a plot. Thoughtlessness can knock harder than malice, I said. He looked at his shoes like they knew the way home. I'll call Miss Cole, he said. I will too, I said. She should know my voice before she reads my name. Harbor sat in a former bakery. The windows remembered cakes. Inside were plants, a rug the color of tea, chairs that forgave backs. Miss Cole was tall without being sharp. She held a pen like a conductor holding a beginner's orchestra. I'll ask simple questions and we'll make a simple plan, she said. You each get vetoes for words you can't swallow. What do you want most to protect? She asked me first. My choices, I said. And the right to change my mind without calling it illness. She wrote that at the top, not the middle. She asked Evan. Her safety, he said. And her dignity, even when safety and dignity argue. She asked Marcy. Time, she said. We've been living on call. It's like holding your breath while doing taxes. Time is the first thing fights spend, Miss Cole said. The headings on her form were plain. Repairs, access, money, meds, feelings, yes, feelings, emergencies. Repairs, small jobs scheduled by text. Big jobs need a brief call. Nothing begins without my written yes. She underlined yes as if it were a person. Access. 2 keys stay with me. A contractor key lives in a lockbox controlled by Harbor. Code changes require written notice to all 3 of us. Emergency override needs 2 people, Harbor and 1 family member, with a recorded call. She boxed the note and wrote, not for convenience. Money. Invoices go to Harbor. Harbor explains to me first. We greenlight together. Evan is copied so he can sleep. Marcy is copied so she doesn't have to ask Evan. If Miss Pritchard says no, no one sneaks a yes around her, Miss Cole wrote verbatim. Meds. I keep using the organizer. The pharmacist keeps counseling. If I miss 2 days, I call Miss Cole and my doctor. Changes happen on a short Zoom, with Harbor taking notes in plain words only. Feelings. Miss Cole smiled at my eye roll. If we don't put the storm on paper, it will move into all the rooms, she said. We each wrote 1 textable sentence. I'm scared we're turning into managers. I feel like I'm choosing between your safety and your love. I feel invisible until there's a crisis. When these appear, Ms. Cole said, stop tasks. Talk. Or call me. Emergencies. Fire, fall, flood, panic. Panic is real, she said. When your body shouts, we're dying, but you're just tired. For that one, call each other first if you can, then call me. Nobody calls the police on anybody unless someone isn't breathing. We signed. She photocopied and handed us thick paper that refuses to go through the wash. Outside, Marcy touched the page as if ink might rub off. It's not my favorite, she said. But I can breathe. Breathing beats winning, I said. Work remembered it was human. A contractor texted Harbor. Harbor texted me. I wrote yes. The porch bracket was fixed in 20 minutes. The wood sighed like old things do when someone notices. A glossy flyer arrived. We have a buyer for your block. My street, not my name. I taped it to a blank sheet and wrote no thank you in calm letters, then slid it behind a tab labeled notices that pretend to be kind. A car slowed. Phone lifted at my windows. I stepped onto the porch and waved. Not warning, not welcome, just proof of life. The car moved on. I returned to pantry duty at church. At the check-in table, a man said, I'll know how I am tomorrow. That's how most answers should be. We fed who we could. We wrote down nothing about who cried. At the lawyer's office, a notary read the new lines aloud in plain English. My home remains my home while my mind steers. Pushing and scaring don't earn prizes. If I truly lose the wheel, a helper who's not a relative and not a stranger to kindness takes the wheel. I signed. Ink made a small lake and then a road. Marcy came, not Evan. She read the page with lips pressed into a line you get from difficult tests. Does this mean you won't need us? She asked. It means I need you in ways that don't erase me, I said. That's not an answer. It's the one I have. Outside, the air felt like a clean towel. We adjusted our straps and our ideas of each other. People don't sit still while you learn them. Our first 15-minute call with MS. Cole was uneventful, success disguised as boring. Wins? She asked. Bracket, I said. Binder tab, stay put. Evan, I asked first instead of Googling. Marcy, I didn't make a spreadsheet. We laughed because the truth can be gentle. Concerns. Evan, a big slide, okay until we're not. Miss Cole, most slides make noise. Let's agree to listen. Marcy, I'm living on call. Miss Cole gifted her 2 no-call evenings a week, unless someone isn't breathing. What about you? She asked me. What makes this week feel like your life? Onions on the stove with no one texting while they soften, I said. Add it, she said. Wednesday. Protected. On Wednesday, onions hissed. I ignored 2 texts and did not die. The world kept its shape. Only the pan sang. Old habits spike. Marcy texted, we'll come Saturday to pre-sort the garage. Send a list, I wrote. We'll do it together, she wrote. A list is together, I wrote back. Evan called. Can't we be spontaneous? Spontaneity is for picnics, I said. Not for houses. He laughed and sent a list with color codes worthy of angels. Donate old photo frames, 1 line read. No frames, I texted. Not today. We're not editing memory for efficiency. We mean broken glass, he said by phone. Say broken, I said. When people don't say broken, they usually mean something else. He promised to mean the small thing, he said. Saturday, MS. Cole arrived first, opened the lockbox with a click like a radio finding a station, and assigned roles. Evan lifted, Marcy listed, I decided. 3 bins, she said. Keep, give, decide later. Photos of decide later. Revisit in 2 weeks. No ambushes. Hour 1 was mud and minnows, tangled cords, holiday lights, a boot no one owned. Hour 2, my mother's recipe cards, pencil smudged where her knuckle touched winter. Marcy reached, then stopped, waiting for my yes like a proper noun. Keep, I said. That box is how I know my name. A white SUV slowed again. Miss Cole stepped outside and wrote the plate on her palm. The car drifted off, undecided. That counts as grace. We ended with 3 bins of keep, 1 of give, and a modest stack of decide later. Decisions allowed to be alive. Ms. Cole sent photos titled No Surprises. Mercy, not command. After they left, I touched the decide later pile as if it were sleeping. Old frames, a coat between seasons, ribbons that remembered other hands. When you're older, your house becomes a museum of unfinished conversations. Cataloging is a way to honor what you're not ready to end. The next call arrived with wind. Your mailbox flag was up, twice, Marcy said. That's how porch thieves shop. I raised it for the carrier, I said. It's down. Camera, she asked. Harbor can hold the password. You can if it doesn't look like a threat. They all look like eyes. Then hang a bell, I said. What kind? One that chimes when a package sits. Sound over stare. Softer surveillance, Miss Cole said. We chose a door chime that sounded like a teaspoon tapping glass. When a wrong package arrived, the chime told us to notice without accusing. The book was a mistake. The pantry gained a dessert. Marcy sent a screenshot, not a spreadsheet that was obviously a spreadsheet. Trash day, refills, check-ins. It helps me see us, she wrote. Okay, I answered. Change the font so it doesn't look like a boss. She did. We both breathed. Evan replaced a smoke detector and pressed test. The siren was awful and perfect. That's what we need, he said. Alarms that only shout when shouting helps. He looked at the closet where house rules lived. I don't hate it as much, he said. You will again, I said. Feelings are a carousel. Hold the pole. If stories liked bows, we'd stop here. People don't. Evan forwarded a family thread screenshot from which I had removed myself on purpose. Marcy's sister, why not move her in now? Faster. Benefits listed like a menu of control. I put my phone face down and made tea no one could argue with. In the ledger. Today I wanted to run. I stayed. Ms. Cole called unprompted. I saw the screenshot, she said. It isn't your lane to answer it. It's mine. That's generous, I said. It's my job to keep the road from turning into a ditch, she said, and emailed a kind agenda, 1 hour to ask one hard question kindly. No CCNG the whole circus. I dreamed that night of rooms that became hallways as I approached. I woke laughing. Not all doorless dreams are mean, some are blueprints. The meeting, Ms. Cole opened with oxygen. Ruth decides today. We support, we don't replace. If there's a cliff, we take the smallest step that holds. We don't build elevators where handrails will do. Marcy's sister said, this is taking forever. You can't just, Ms. Cole said, kindly, without apology. I want to say one true thing, I said, tapping the word all on house rules. If I fall, I want hands. If I falter, I want eyes. If I fight, I want ears. I don't want anyone's fear to move in before I do. The room exhaled enough to hear itself. Assignments, Evan, 2 repair estimates, copy harbor. Marcy, honor no call blocks. Me, choose a medical pendant that doesn't feel like punishment. Ms. Cole, send links that sound like people, not sales. I picked a pendant that looked like jewelry. When I pressed test, a voice through wires asked my name. I said it. It sounded like mine. Sundays, I sit with the choir even when I don't sing. Sound behaves better near other lungs. After service, a woman with a defeated umbrella asked how I was. Being an adult is hard, I said. You'd think we'd be good at it by now, she said. We laughed, rude and honest. Evan came with a ladder and that face people have after long car conversations with themselves. He fixed a flickering hallway light, then drank lemonade like a man whose thirst had outlived his awareness. When I said a judge would decide if you stay, I thought I was being mature, he said. I didn't think how it would sound inside your chest. Like eviction without boxes, I said. He flinched, tiny lightning. Fear makes me bossy, he said. Fear makes me write signs, I said. I'm glad you write, he said. I can read. Why is saying yes to help so hard? He asked. Because help arrives wearing helmets and harnesses, I said. I keep wishing it would arrive wearing hands. The first review came fast. Same courtroom, same pencils. Updates in short sentences. Repairs underway, Evan said. No surprises. Weekly calls on time, Marcy said. Harbor functioning, Ms. Cole said. Family using tools without turning them into weapons. House still mine, I said. Onions on Wednesdays. Good, the judge said, signing the sound of weather on paper. Continue. Another review in 60 days. Bring me a sentence you're proud of. Outside, I did not pour coffee. I took the extra cup from my bag and threw it away on purpose. Symbols are good friends until they start asking rent. We found a diner with unrepentant fries. Marcy spoke about a project with 100 invisible decisions. I spoke about a man at the pantry who fell in love with a can of peaches because it meant breakfast. We didn't solve. We practiced not turning each other into problems. It felt like learning to walk on a floor that had promised not to move. A storm grazed us that week. Power blinked. I lit one candle and listened to it practice being confident. The lights returned before the worry finished putting on its shoes. A note arrived from the boy 2 houses down offering to sweep leaves. I won't move anything without asking, it said in careful pencil. I paid cash and 4 cookies. He swept like someone who knows the difference between dirt and history. Ms. Cole phoned with a sentence she'd been refining. When love is tired, it becomes efficient, she said. Efficiency is great for laundry and terrible for people. I taped it under house rules. Not law. Reminder. A wobble. Marcy texted that she'd found a deal on storage. Just for decide later. She didn't finish the next thought, or for staging if we. I replied with my sentence. I'm scared we're turning into managers. She replied with hers. I feel invisible until there's a crisis. Silence. Then, Talk in the morning? With Harbor? Yes. The storage plan died gently. We moved 2 decide-later boxes into the house so I'd bump them and remember to decide. I tripped once and didn't fall. The boxes looked pleased to be included. Evan installed a butter-colored nightlight. He texted a photo and a question mark before arriving. I said yes. He brought a small plant. It keeps track of itself better than we do, he said. It didn't. I watered it. We lied kindly. That's one of the better kinds of lying. Second review. Same skirt. I wanted the bench to recognize me. Fewer questions this time. Trust looks like that when the pen intends to respect the page. Any emergencies? The judge asked. No, Ms. Cole said. Just ordinary. Lots of it. Ordinary is underrated, he said, signing again. Continue. If anything tilts, call. If not, see you in 60 days. Bring me one sentence you're proud of. On the steps, Evan took a photo to remember the place that didn't make it worse. We bought cookies made with butter and faith, ate them too fast for dignity, and let sugar pick our mood. Marcy's laugh lost its angles. Evan looked younger for a minute and then remembered his years again. Rest trades like that. On the bus home, I thought about the first red blink on the garage opener and how quickly fear names itself, future. I thought about house rules shifting from shield to mirror. It doesn't keep them out, it keeps us honest. At my door, I touched the frame, wood older than my son, grain that remembers storms and backpacks. The lock turned without comment, the kindest thing locks do. Inside, the ledger waited where I left it. I added one line. We asked before assuming. We paused before moving. Love isn't a spreadsheet. Safety isn't a siren. We learned slowly. It counted anyway. Some nights worry still choose the hem of sleep. I get up, drink water, check the stove, check the door, check the plant that pretends to be responsible. Then I go back to bed and decide to be a person again in the morning. Not heroic maintenance. Cars get oil. People get decisions. The phone buzzed once. Miss Cole, remember your Wednesday. Oil and onions. I turned the phone face down and smiled into the dark. Outside, something small moved in the yard. Not a threat. A life. The order can be short, the judge said last time. Bring me one sentence you're proud of. I'll give you that sentence, the letter that let an agency step back, and the moment our plan worked when fear tried to dress up as urgency. By noon today, the paper will lie still. After that, we'll have to. A closure note from a worker who saw my house with her own eyes. A plain English plan we actually used. But first, rewind 1 week to a morning when a phone call sounded like trouble and chose not to be. 1 week earlier, my phone said unknown caller with the politeness of a stranger at your door. I answered because sometimes strangers are just people who haven't learned your name yet. Grandma? A voice said wrong pitch, right script. It's me. I'm in trouble. Don't tell, I don't have grandchildren who call me grandma, I said, calm as a kitchen table. And we don't send money by phone. I pressed speaker, tapped record, and texted Ms. Cole one word, scam. She texted back the sentence we had agreed on for panic that isn't. Breathe, then decide. I breathed. I decided. I hung up. 10 minutes later, Evan called. Did you get a weird call? He asked, already braced. Yes, I said. I followed the plan. He exhaled into the line like a man who had been holding his inhale since Wednesday. Good, he said. I hate that there are people who do that. There are also people who fix porch brackets in 20 minutes, I said. Let them be louder in our heads. That afternoon, the chime at the door gave a single clear note. A delivery. I checked the label. It was mine. I opened it with a butter knife that has seen more birthdays than some marriages and found the APS envelope instead, my name on the fold, the letter warm from somebody's hand. Summary. Visit complete. No safety concerns. File closed unless new facts arise. I read it twice. Not because I doubted it, but because good news has a way of asking, are you sure I may stay? I slid the letter into the binder behind the notes where Miss Petty had written the dates she walked through my hallway. Then I wrote a line in the ledger. A state worker met my house and left it standing. 2 days before court, Miss Cole held our 15 minutes with a clock that behaves. Practice your proud sentence, she said. One line that fits in your mouth without splinters. Mine, I want the gentlest help that still protects, and I remain the person being protected. Evan's, I can keep Mom safe without taking her place. Marcy's, I will help in ways that make room for her voice, especially when mine is loud. We didn't rehearse like performers. We rehearsed like people who want fewer collisions at the intersection where love and fear have perpetual green. The morning of court, I wiped the table with a damp cloth because it mattered that would feel clean under paper. I tucked the closure letter under a blue sticky flag. I touched each tab in the binder the way a person touches names at a memorial, A for call logs and screenshots, B for certified mail, C for the neutral helper plan, D for the credit union note, E for city notices and the porch report, F for the agency visit and the closure line, G for the pharmacist's counseling notes, H for the plain English trust update, I for house rules for all of us. The alphabet has never felt so domestic. On the way downtown, the bus held 3 conversations and a silence. A woman told a man not to give up on his application because no sometimes means the person answering forgot their courage. A boy pressed his forehead to the glass to count dogs. A nurse in scrubs closed her eyes with the dignity of the exhausted. The silence was mine. I let it stretch across my knees and warm my hands. In the hallway, I did not take out the extra cup. I took out a pen and wrote my proud sentence on the back of the hearing notice. I want the gentlest help that still protects, and I remain the person being protected. I underlined remain, not protected. It matters what you emphasize. The judge came in with the soft authority of someone who knows which words create more problems than they solve. He looked at Ms. Cole, at Evan and Marcy at me. He asked for updates without hunting for failure. No emergencies, Ms. Cole said. Just the kind of ordinary that keeps people from breaking. Repairs proceeding, no surprises, Evan said. I stopped myself from scheduling us into oblivion, Marcy said, almost smiling. I held up the letter. Agency visit closed. I waited for the small nod that lets relief move its things inside you. He read the line, then placed it on the stack like a weight that knows where to sit. Good, he said. That means we can keep this spare. He picked up his pen. It looked like any pen. Today it held the job of putting shape around a life. MS. Pritchard, he said. Your sentence. I read it, slow enough that each word could find a chair. He nodded, wrote one phrase that included the word gentlest as if it had the same standing as order. Mr. Pritchard? Evan read his, hands steady. Miss Pritchard, he asked Marcy. The younger. Marcy read hers and kept her throat from hiding the part where her voice bent. The judge turned the notice over and began to speak the kind of paragraphs that survive copier toner and kitchen drawers. Order, plain language, the request for temporary control is denied. The plan with Harbor Family Services continues for another 60 days. Weekly check-ins remain. No changing codes without written yes from Ruth and Pritchard. No entering the home without scheduled access. No showing or listing the property. Written list required for any items removed. MS. Pritchard initialing each line. Repairs proceed by text scheduling. Ms. Pritchard's written yes comes first. If safety truly breaks, take the smallest step that holds. Return to this court if a bigger step seems needed. Agency visit closed. The letter is part of the file. Review set for 60 days. He looked at us to see where the words landed. Not triumph. Not punishment. Function. Anything you want to say that won't undo this? He asked, almost wry. Thank you, I said. For building a handrail instead of a fence. He smiled without endorsing the metaphor. Judges are careful with poetry. We stood to leave. The clerk handed me a copy of the order clipped with an ordinary piece of metal that held fast like faith on quiet days. In the hallway, Evan rubbed the corner of his copy as if the paper might purr. Lunch? Marcy asked, cautious, hopeful. Somewhere that doesn't punish fries for being fries, I said. The diner was honest about grease and mercy. We chose a booth near the window, where the sun pretended to understand everything. Evan opened the order and read the lines again, not to memorize them, but to let them seep. Marcy put her phone face down and did not flip it back over. Small victories don't ring bells, they sit still until you notice them. I thought the order would feel like rules, Marcy said. It feels like space. Rules make space when they're sized right, I said. Like seams in a dress. Too tight, you can't breathe. Too loose, you trip. Did you always talk like this? Evan asked, half teasing. No, I said. I learned to when I found out other people like my house. We ate. We didn't solve. We let food be food and not a therapy prop, and that, too, is respect. On the sidewalk, Evan stopped by the brick wall that holds gullible weather in its shade. Mom, he said, if a bigger step ever becomes right, how will we know? When the little steps stop touching the ground, I said. And not because someone kicked them out from under us. He nodded the way a person nods at a recipe that uses ingredients he can afford. The next days were not dramatic, exactly what the judge ordered. When life is not breaking, you hear softer things. On Wednesday, I kept my promise to oil and onions. I added a handful of chopped celery, the way I was taught by someone whose apron never apologized for the stains. I set 2 plates and then laughed at myself and put one back. Old habits set a table for grief. New habits seat it kindly and feed it something warm. Ms. Cole called for our standing check-in. What sentence are you proud of this week? She asked, a new ritual. Evan, I asked before assuming. Marcy, I paused before moving. Me, I let ordinary count. That's the work, Ms. Cole said. That's always the work. On Friday, a letter came from the credit union confirming that the manager had attached my note to the account and that staff had been briefed. The letter was boring in the way bridges are. You want them dull and faithful. I filed it under D and gave the binder a light pat like a cat you love, but don't want to wake. On Saturday, we cleaned the back room with the kind of patience that knows we're not fighting the dust. We're making room for the next hour. We found a jar of buttons that had outlived each shirt they came from. Marcy wanted to throw it out. Evan wanted to save it. I opened the lid and let my hand sink in. Keep, I said. We'll purchase our neatness elsewhere. Evan laughed. Marcy rolled her eyes and smiled without showing teeth. Progress, not parade. At church on Sunday, a woman with a voice like a good bridge asked if I would stand during joys and concerns. I shook my head, then nodded, then stood anyway when my legs reminded me that standing isn't always about being seen. Grateful for a small order that fits, I said. Grateful for helpers who talk like people. Grateful for Wednesdays. I sat. Hands patted my shoulder in that uncoordinated way communities have of agreeing that something decent happened. In the foyer, a man said, my brother and I stopped speaking about our mother after she fell. We both wanted to be right. Neither of us wanted to be kind. He looked at his shoes, then up. Your sentence might help. I wanted to ask which one. I didn't. People take what they need. You don't get to edit that. 2 weeks after the order, Harbor hosted a short meeting with Marcy's sister, the one who prefers speed. Miss Cole opened with, we're keeping this brief and useful. She put the order in the center of the table and said, we will not relitigate kindness. It sounded like a joke, it wasn't. I still think moving would be simpler, the sister said. So would erasing half the alphabet, Ms. Cole answered. You'd finish quicker. You wouldn't say much. We gave the sister 3 jobs that fit inside the order. Call for repair estimates when asked, drive me to 2 appointments a month if I say yes, and bring dessert to the next family meal without ingredients that boss a body. She agreed, partly because she wanted to be useful and partly because specific mercy is easier than theory. On the way out, she said to me, you're stubborn. I'm 74, I said. It's the only hobby I can do seated. We both laughed like a door giving up its creak. The plant Evan brought started drooping like a sentence that forgot its verb. I adjusted water and light and moved it 2 feet to the left, which in plant language is a paragraph. It straightened enough to look like it remembered why it bothered. I told Evan on our call. Same, he said. I moved my chair at work. Turns out I was arguing with a draft. Marcy used one of our agreed sentences in a text. I feel invisible until there's a crisis. Dinner here Sunday, I replied. No crisis required. She arrived with a salad that believed in itself. We ate with forks that had belonged to someone else first and didn't mind it. Evan told a story that had no moral and nobody learned a lesson, and we laughed without turning the moment into a blueprint. After they left, I wrote one line, we ate without planning a rescue. Time passed like a decent neighbor, present, unremarkable, available when asked. The review date came again. Same building, same bench, new steadiness. Any change? The judge asked. Only the kind people make, Miss Cole said. He signed a new copy of the same order with a small addition. Parties may, by agreement, reduce Harbor's role as ordinary proves itself. Do you want that now? He asked, looking at me. Later, I said. When ordinary is muscle, not luck. Wise, he said. Outside, Evan pointed his phone at the sky. For once, he said, the clouds look like clouds. Not metaphors? I asked. Not today, he said. We found coffee that tasted like somebody cared which beans they used, and we drank it without declaring what it meant. On a Tuesday that behaved like a Tuesday, a flyer appeared offering money for houses exactly like yours. I wrote no on a sticky note and covered the number. Then I added the flyer to the binder under E and let it stop bothering anyone's imagination. Later that day, the door chime sounded its little toast for a package I did mean to buy, a box of blank no cards. I wrote one to Miss Petty at the agency. Thank you for visiting when I invited you and leaving when I asked. Not everyone knows how to do both. I wrote one to the credit union manager. Your boring letter is beautiful. I wrote one to Ms. Cole. If Harbor were a soup, it would be chicken with noodles that hold their shape. I did not mail that last one. The garage keypad light returned to a calm green, as if it had forgiven us all for our first week. I changed nothing about it except my mind. I realized I did not want control for control's sake. I wanted the right to open what is mine and to invite someone else to open it only when I could look at them while they did it. That evening, I sat on the step between the kitchen and the hall, the place in a house where meals promised to turn into conversation. I thought about the sentence the judge made us bring. I thought about the ones we keep making for ourselves. I used to believe adulthood was learning to carry more. Now I think it's learning which weight is not yours. I used to believe love meant speed. Now I think love means measuring your pace to the person who will have to live with what you decide. I used to believe safety was a siren. Now I think safety is a habit, boring, faithful, many small yes with no music under them. A month after the order, Evan and Marcy arrived with a paper sack that smelled like a street fair. We tried, Marcy said, handing me something that involved cinnamon and innocence. We did not spreadsheet the fries. We ate at my table, elbows behaving, napkins ambitious. Evan offered to hang a picture that had been leaning against the wall for a year because I could not make it choose a place. There, he said, and I said nothing and moved it a thumb to the left with the authority of the person who looked at that wall longer. He didn't argue. He held the nail steady. We let a picture claim its moment. Before they left, Evan asked, "Do you want me to take the trash out?" "Yes," I said. He did. We didn't dignify it with meaning. I wrote it down anyway. On the next Wednesday, onions again. I thought of the judge and his pen, of Miss Cole and her clock, of Ms. Petty and her letter, of Marcy with a salad, of Evan with a nail and a plant that insisted. I thought about everyone who had been in my house on paper and in air and left it standing. The phone buzzed once on the counter. A text from Miss Cole, no agenda. Just checking in. Are you hearing the ordinary? Yes, I wrote back. It's louder than I remember. Good, she wrote. Keep it that way. I turned down the heat and turned up the quiet and stood in the doorway to the hall. The photos on the wall breathed. My name stayed my name. The house did not need me to prove anything to it. I sat, ate, washed the pan, dried it, hung the towel straight, and put the binder back where it lives. Not because I needed it tonight, but because I like knowing where my life is when I reach. If you asked me now for the sentence I'm proud of, I'd give you two. One for a room with microphones, one for a kitchen with a pan. For the room, I want the gentlest help that still protects, and I remain the person being protected. For the kitchen, tonight, ordinary one and nobody had to lose. People want finales that clap. I don't. I want Tuesdays that don't lie about themselves, Wednesdays that keep their promises, and orders that fit on one page because people did the longer work outside the frame. The world will keep trying to turn us into procedures. We will keep putting our hands on the parts of the day that still feel like skin. We will speak plain sentences and write names clearly and ask before assuming and pause before moving. We will practice, and the practice will count. When I turn off the light, it goes dark, and that is not a metaphor. It is a room doing its job. I go to bed. I decide to be a person again in the morning. And then I am.